doesn't really matter what Joe Rogan says or does. It's always going to be taken out of context. It's always going to be used to smear him. Two things going on for today's video. One, he's leaving California. And some comments he made about video games that seems to have some people upset, which I don't understand why, especially if you understand some of the reasoning for why he's saying this. But I wanted to start here. Joe Rogan is pretty self-made to a point. His podcast is really the big reason why he's popular. He was popular before that, but nowhere near to the heights he is now. The podcast that he does has really elevated him. He's almost in some ways the modern Howard Stern. And his podcast is self-owned. He got a $100 million deal from Spotify, but he maintains control of it. It's just for, they're paying him the money basically to just be exclusively on their platform. But he's still going to use YouTube for clips and stuff. You're just not going to see the entire show there. You're not going to get the audio, and you're not going to get the video. Though, from what I understand, they are going to have a video platform. I think Spotify might rise up and actually be a competitor against YouTube in the long run. We'll see. I don't know. But I think it's a brilliant business move because he's using YouTube to promote his podcast now. So here's some of the comments he was saying. When you look at the traffic, when you look at the economic despair, when you look at the homelessness problem that's accelerated radically over the last 6, 7, 10 years, I think there's too many people here. I think it's not tenable. I don't think that it's manageable. And so he's going to Texas. But a lot of people say, what's the real reason he's leaving for Texas, though? A lot of people point out that the income tax deal is better in Texas. And his money that's going to be coming in from Spotify won't be as taxed as hard. And that's a fair point, but why couldn't he go to Florida then? Florida has a pretty good deal on income tax, so that's a place he could go as well. There's a lot of reasons he's leaving for Texas. One of the things has the beer bug thing, stuff like that, so on and so on. But this is just another example of people kind of coming after him for something he does. The other thing is the video games. So recently, he had some comments where he said, Joe Rogan says grinding games is a waste of time for most people, which caused a lot of outrage. People are upset about this, which I didn't really understand because if you go back, not even that further into the past, this was July 12th that this was published. You would have seen it a lot sooner if you listened to his podcast, but he said he had an addiction to playing video games. Joe Rogan was like an alcoholic with video games and had to quit playing them. On a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, host Rogan discusses how he developed a serious addiction to video games. So he talks about a lot of things with games, on how we were playing hours every day to the point where Jamie was telling me I had a problem. Rogan said, primarily in reference to the game Quake Champions, my hands would be sweaty and I would feel like I'm nervous. Rogan said I physically was feeling bad. Rogan stated that his game addiction caused him stress and was impacting his sleep schedule, so he ultimately decided to step away from the hobby. And they point out here that most people won't experience these problems if you go by the World Health Organization's statements on it. I think some people can have a problem with anything. Anything can become a problem. This became a problem for him, so he stepped away. I don't see the issue here. So to him, playing games is a waste of time. All right, I don't think he's telling gamers, you're terrible people or anything. He's just giving his opinion. He should be allowed to give his opinion on things. I don't think that this is a hot take, especially if you understand where he's coming from as someone who had an issue with it and couldn't step away, and it was getting to the point where it was affecting his work and stuff like that. I think that's a pretty good reason to step away from something if it's becoming a big problem for you. I don't think he said here that, if this is what you want to do, some people can be quite successful at it too. A lot of people make careers out of playing games, streamers and such. Someone who tried to jump in on this was Ninja, pretty much using this moment to try to advocate for him to come on to Joe Rogan's podcast. I bet you'd like to go on there for some promotion, wouldn't you? But let's take a look at what is actually being said here and talk about it a little bit more. One topic that arises frequently on the show is gaming, with Rogan himself having previously been an avid gamer, but also sharing cautionary tales of his own trouble with the hobby. He expanded on his view in his latest show with author and founder of Spartan Race, Joe DeSanta. Video games are a real problem, Rogan said. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're effing fun. You do them and they're really exciting, but you don't get anywhere. Okay, but he is saying they're fun and you do them, but do you really get anywhere? I mean, you sure you get somewhere, you have fun. I mean, I think they're incredibly fun. I love gaming. So, I get what he's saying here. You could be doing something else, right? The end of the day here, what he's saying, I'm going to get to it, is you could be doing something where you could be making money. You could be doing something where you could be, working on some kind of way to get in better shape or something. It's kind of the way that he's trying to push this, but I feel like it got lost there. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to sit down and play a game, especially if you're busy and you want to sit down, you want to relax. That's why it's the most popular form of entertainment. But a lot of people are taking this as saying, oh, he's blasting gamers and jumping all over him. Every time he does something, this happens. And I find it crazy. And I think a lot of this has to do with he's just self-made and mainstream media can't really touch him. You would have a tough time canceling Joe Rogan. They've tried, and they're going to keep trying. But you can't really cancel him. He owns his podcast. The only way that you could get rid of him is if you were to remove him from every podcasting website. Something similar to what they did with, I don't even know if I should mention his name, but there was a guy who used to be on YouTube, still has a news website, and he was still on like Apple and Google, but they removed him from those. They pretty much unpersoned him. I don't see them ever doing something like that to Joe Rogan. What kind of extreme thing could they say he did to remove him from podcast websites? So I think he'll be fine. Pretty much whatever he says, I think he'll be fine. I don't think they're going to be able to cancel him. And it's just funny to watch these sites squirm and try, and it just never works. But he goes on to say Rogan contrasted video games with jiu-jitsu and stated that someone who put significant effort into running a martial arts school would likely be experiencing success after 3 years of grinding. In episode 1514 of JRE, he argued that someone who grinds video games for the same amount of time is still unlikely to be earning money from that particular pursuit. So that's what I was saying. So someone starts a jiu-jitsu school. They grind 3 years later, they're likely going to have success, as in making money with clients coming in. Whereas if you put in that 3 hours a day or however many hours a day playing games, after 3 years, you're not going to be making any money. Now, I disagree. Now, some people could, particularly with the rise of esports and streaming. I think that they could. But for some people, it's not about just grinding to make money all the time. Some people just want to relax. And if they're getting good at it and having a good time, I do think you're getting something out of it. So I disagree with what he's saying there. I think it's all in the perspective of the person. However, I do think that Joe Rogan should be allowed to have his opinion and for not to be turned on his head and for this to be some reason to try to smear him. What this really is an attempt, because it's a very large population, is to maybe smear him with gamers a little bit. To maybe kind of, okay, gamers, maybe you don't want to like this guy, because this is the number one podcast, I believe. It's at least up there. He has a huge global audience. And when you have so many people that are into video gaming, hey, maybe we can shed some of that weight off by doing this. It's just little things. I rarely ever see positive press for Joe Rogan in the news. Anything coming out of like a mainstream site is usually always a smear job on Joe Rogan. And this is just another little good example of this, of them trying to smear him now with gamers and stuff. I saw this take two. This is off of the heels of him not wanting to work on UFC 4. And I say, who cares? He didn't want to play. He didn't want to do voiceover commentary for UFC. He turned it down. He said just didn't want to do it. He didn't like doing it. He said it in other podcasts. He didn't want to do it. And he doesn't care. He doesn't want to do UFC 4 commentary. Who cares? I don't see that as a big deal either, though it is kind of contradictory to where he says, oh, if he's making that drive to make money. However, I would say the real reason he probably doesn't want to do UFC commentary in a video game is probably because he sees himself as a video game addict and doesn't want to step away from it. Maybe that's what it is too. I don't know. All I know is who cares? He doesn't like games. Let me take that back. I think he really does like games, but he doesn't want to get down with them again where he saw them as taking up all of his time when he could have been doing other things that would have been more beneficial to him. So I think he's just stepping away from it. Anyway, that's my opinion. I don't think there's any reason to not like Joe Rogan because he sees video games as a waste of time. It's just a funny example of them going after him for stupid stuff again. Anyway, that's it, guys. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. What are your thoughts? What do you have to say? I want to hear from you. Also, if you would throw a like up, share the video. Make sure you still subscribe. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that notification bell, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace. Also, if you want to help support the channel, check out my Teespring store. There's a link in the description. You can find some merchandise in there that you might want to check out.